Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today and sticking through the weather outside. Appreciate that. We'll go through some quick introductions real quick and then get started. So today, no, we're good. So, there we go. I'm going to start. So Greg Abel, COO of Cabi, is unable to join us. His board meeting was moved to today, unfortunately. So he is with them, rightfully so. And he was kind enough and shared some verbiage for me to share with everyone here today. So I'll do that quickly. So in 2001, the world of retail had women leaving the mall deflated by the anxiety and inefficiency and endless isolated effort of browsing through department stores. So one of their founders, Carol Anderson, thought that there had to be a better way to get clothing into women's hands and started this journey. So she reached out to a couple colleagues of hers. It ended up being about 10 individuals, and they sat down and really thought about how they can do this, given the environment that they were in back in the early 2000s. What could they do? So like I mentioned, 10 of them got together, and what they decided to do is come up with Cabi in a way to bring women together, which is one of their core things they try to do. So it's about the clothing, but it's more about the partnership, empowering women, and bringing everyone together, talking about the beautiful clothing. So one of their mottos is, and I know I'm paraphrasing what Greg said, is really cool. They want to affect the lives through the relationships while they're in a home, talking about the clothing, bonding, and sharing their experiences together, which I think is super cool. Greg isn't here, but it's a passion that he has as well, empowering women, their quality of their clothing, the quality of their distribution center, the people they have working for them. It's something they all take very seriously, and it's been a great partnership. And it's unfortunate you can't be here to join us. Through I'll say administrative error, I put our managing principal Michael up here as well. He's joining us right back there. If you have any further questions or feedback on Kevin's portion of the presentation, please go to him. Don't talk about me. Thank you. I'll go next. I'm a senior managing director in the warehouse practice. So myself and my team worked on this project, and we'll get in all those details in a few moments. I've been with Alpine about 1.5 years now. I've been in the retail business for 20 plus years, designing distribution centers, labor management systems, name it, I've seen it and done it. And then to my left is our partner here, Mr. Kevin Thompson, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Kevin Thompson. I work for Systems in Motion. We're an integrator, equipment agnostic, work with Jerry and the Alpine team to build out a DC, be the racking, automation, whatever's needed. We can bring both out and get the racking and the automation portions put together for the customer.
Can you guys hear Kevin okay? Better, perfect. All right, thank you. So real quick, a little about Alpine. We're a boutique supply chain consulting company. We have the warehouse practice and our systems practice. We're mainly going to focus on the warehouse side today, so you'll see multiple offerings through this. We do a lot, warehouse design, DNAs, distribution network analysis, slotting, name it, we do it. And then we also have the system side. I'll point out Mr. Greg Abel here. If you have any systems question, he is by far the smartest man I've ever known in that realm. So we do WMS implementation, selection, support, go live support, post go live support, ton of stuff there. He's your man there if you want to talk to him about that. So meeting Cabi again. So just a message from their CEO. I won't read this. I'll give you guys a couple seconds to take a peek at it. But once again, just really, they believe their clothes can change lives through the relationships they build with their model. Cabi does do it. It's kind of an in-home show. So you have a show host opens up their home. They invite friends and family, or other people who are interested in the clothing. They invite them over. They show the clothes, and they're ordered, and they're then shipped to the show host to hand out. So what do we try to do with Cabi? So Cabi needed to make an investment in their supply chain. They are based in Southern California right now, and they wanted to increase customer satisfaction by lowering their costs. They also wanted to look at possible automation, being a crawl, walk, run method. So what could we do in the near term and the long term to help them? And then they also have been running their own distribution network since they opened, and they were interested in what a 3PL model would look like to alleviate some of the pressures and some of the management on the distribution side. And then where should they be? In Southern California, you're kind of isolated in the southwest. You'll see in some slides farther down where their clients are located are all over the U.S. So are they in the right spot? Could we save some money there? And then most importantly, and what I love about Alpine is the fact that we take a very unbiased approach to everything. We're system agnostic, we're partner agnostic. We are there for our clients to put the best solutions in front of them. And whoever that's with, whatever it looks like, that's our goal, is to hit our measures of success. So we take a very unbiased approach there. So with Cabi, our first engagement is what we call an SMP, a strategic master plan. What we do here is we come in, we evaluate the operations, we learn the operations as well as the staff there does. And what we try to do is create a baseline. That baseline then allows us to look at all the different options to see if there's any return on investment or any good additions that we can do for them. And so there's a few areas that we look at here. We look at their location. We look at their processes. We look at their transportation. We look at wages. We look at leases. We look at everything. We compile that together, and we present that to the client. So this talks about, understanding the current state. So that's the first thing we do with the SMP. So to do that, we looked at 4 options with Cabi. Our option number 1 was really maintaining their current environment in California, just making an updated pick mod design and some pack automation. Very simple. Like I mentioned, that crawl, walk, run approach. So this was the crawl. Really just keep things as simple as possible. Stay where you're at. Don't make any changes. We know your current environment works. It might not be as efficient as it should be, but it works. Option 2 was, let's move. Where should we be? What should it look like? So we looked at a single DC. Then we said, well, you're a nationwide company. Let's look at 2 places. Maybe that's better. Let's have a 2 DC approach. And like I mentioned earlier, the third was looking at 3PL options in the Midwest. So we're trying to cover the gamut there. Then we also looked at the do nothing metrics. We're really going after the pick and pack operations. Cabi has a lot of value-added services they do during the picking and packing operations. That's where the biggest ROI is going to be. The receiving their outbound was very standard. Product comes in, they put it away. But it's the quality and what they do for their clients in the picking and packing that separates them. So we looked at their baseline. What were they doing? And if we implemented some changes, what could we do? Obviously, our picking matrix go up. The pack labor savings. Right now, they have 3 associates who pack out. They kind of do a batch pick mentality for the show host, but then there's a sortation operation. There's a check-in process, and then there's an associate who also boxes. So they have 3 associates doing that work, which is a lot of touches. A lot of things can go wrong in there. So by simplifying their operations a little bit, we calculated that we can get them almost a 30% savings in their packing. And also, depending on where we were looking at, we also can get some labor savings. Being in Southern California, it's a very expensive place to work, to live. Their wages represented that. And if we move maybe out of the state, more in the Midwest or somewhere else that's more desirable, we might be able to get some labor savings as well. So what we do nothing. Like I said, we're in Carson, California, beautiful place. Why would I want to leave? I changed some of the numbers to protect the innocent here, but build this out. They wanted a modest growth rate, so we took in their wage rates, their hours, their transportation, calculated all that out, and came up with these do-nothing labor costs. So we had our baseline. What would it look like that we can compare this to with any solution that we would present? Had to be better than this. If it's not better than this, we're not doing our job right. So that's the first thing we verified and validated with them. The next thing we looked at, our transportation. I got a few slides here because the pictures are really cool. But like I said, we looked at a bunch of different places. We looked at 2 DCs, how many packages we wanted to analyze at, and what would be the best for them. So just to orient people where we looked at. So 2 DC model, and I'm going to focus there. The blue would be the West Coast. Obviously, the red would be the Midwest, East Coast. So those are all the combinations and the individual DCs we looked at. We wanted to get a wide breadth of the entire US to make sure we were looking at every available option. We didn't want to focus in on one area. We wanted to focus in on multiple areas to make sure we didn't skip or miss anything. And so those are the areas that we looked at specifically. So a lot's on this slide, but at the end of the day, we had the baseline of the labor. We also counted the baseline of the transportation. Make sure anything we suggested had to beat that number as well, right? So now we have 2 data points to compare our measures of success against. So eye chart, I own this, but you can see we put a ton of effort turning this over as fast as we could for them and calculating out where should we be that would provide the most transportation savings. You can see 2 DCs are up here, single DCs are over here. So this was eye-opening for Cabi. They knew where their clients were because they could look at their outbound shipping data. But those are just numbers and figures. Until you tie it to a financial aspect and say, hey, where you are now is costing $8 million and change. In a simple move, you could be saving $1.2 million is eye-opening. They didn't realize it could be that significant being in a different location in the country given their outbound volume. They're not shipping millions of packages a year like some of the big box retailers. They're shipping, you saw 695,000 was the packages they want us to calculate with this. Even with that small of a package count, their rate of return for a simple move is in the $1 million range, which was very, very compelling and obviously very important for them to consider. The other thing I wanted to understand is who would ship to who. Like I said, this is the 2 DC model, so you can see the green would be the West Coast facility, the red would be the Midwest, East Coast facility, the blue in the middle is kind of depending on parcel rates at the time, it could be either of the DCs. So you can see the concentration is a package, you can see where their clients are located. A majority of them are on the West Coast along, not the West Coast, I'm sorry, the East Coast along the New York, DC kind of area up there, a little bit in the Midwest, some in Florida, and then really just the major cities on the West Coast. Not a lot in the Midwest, or I should say left of the Midwest. So by looking at all that, incorporating it, we put this very simple table together, looking at the inbound and outbound. You'll notice that for the inbound side, it's actually a negative return. Why is it a negative return? Because we're no longer going to the LA port. Now we have to move stuff farther inland, and that costs more money. So we wanted to make sure we captured that decision here to move. What's really important about this is this was the main driver. Yes, the labor savings are important. Yes, they provided a decision point for them to move forward with, but the majority of the ROI is from this slide here. Transportation was huge for them. You can see by looking at this, your net savings, kind of looking at Vegas and Indy as the leaders in the clubhouse, right? I'm gonna have a sneak peek. We didn't go with Vegas and Indy. I'll get into that in a few moments. So the other thing, like I mentioned, we looked at lease rates, wage rates for the different areas, making sure that also played into account. We have the labor hours, we can calculate that cost. We have the lease costs, so we were looking at kind of where those were as well, and making sure we gave that full, big picture view of every cost available that they would have to incur to make sure that when we presented that final ROI number, it was a true win for Cabi. So here's the decision. This is a fun colored slide. So we have our current location or baseline. By just implementing some of those pick-pack automation savings, through 2034, we could save about $2.5 million for the net cash flow, the cumulative cash flow, sorry. The 1 DC, you can see the cash flow on the far right, 2 DCs, and then the 3PL options. So I'll eliminate the 3PL options right now. Their ROI exceeded 9 years. They were just too expensive given the value-added services that Cabi wanted. The markup on those were just too great, and unfortunately, it didn't pan out. They knew they wanted to leave Carson. You can see just how little that cash flow was. So that's off the table quickly. So now the decision was 1 or 2. You can see Vegas and Indy coming at 14.5. That's a big number, really enticing. Like I said, we didn't go with that. We ended up going with Indy, just 1 DC, a little bit less. And what I loved about the conversation was we sat down with Greg and some other of his leadership, and we talked through, when you look at this project and this decision in a silo, yeah, we should be a 2 DC model. But one of the unique aspects Alpine brings is the fact that we keep the big picture in mind, keep the main thing the main thing. The main thing is that Cabi is going to increase their service, have a less complicated supply chain. A less complicated supply chain is 1 DC. So talking through what would happen at the corporate office to support a 2 DC model would erode that additional cash flow. They'd have to hire additional planners. They'd have to hire additional staff, additional leadership. So that small savings, when you add in all these other things, it didn't pan out for them. And so I love the conversation because we laid out all those other job functions that would have to change and or be added, and the numbers just didn't add up. So they decided, and I agree 100%, just to stick with the Indianapolis region, which they ended up going live earlier this year in January in that facility. And a lot of the previous numbers did pan out from the wage reduction for the associates there, the lease savings and all that stuff were very close to what we predicted. Obviously not spot on, but very close. So they're very content and happy with that 1 DC model in that area. So now we know where we're going. We're going from California, beautiful, sunny beach, to beautiful, just outside Indy, cold, snow. Don't know, I'm just kidding. What's next? Now we got to design inside the 4 walls. Inside the 4 walls is the most important. We got our labor set up. I mean, not labor. We got the building set up. Now we need to do what we call is a STA automation evaluation, a store type analysis and an automation evaluation. What the storage type analysis does for us is tells us what we need to put in the building to support the product properly. What I mean by support the product is size and quantity of those locations. We use an optimization software to support us doing this, and I'll walk through some of the data here in a second, but just kind of setting this up is we take their inbound, outbound data, we look at their inventory levels, and we make sure that we agree on exactly how big the facility should be, how much racking reserve there should be, how much their pick line needs to hold, and we build in the growth to make sure that we don't set them up for day 1, we set them up for year 10. And we talk through that. So that's the storage type, and then the automation evaluation, we look at all that same information, we come up with a conceptual design, and I won't steal Kevin's thunder, and he'll get into that, and then we pass that information to him, that he will take our conceptual design and do a little bit of detailed drawings on that, really define what that's going to look like, and present that to the client. And he'll talk through that portion of it here shortly. So one thing we do, when we do our STAs, we look at everything. It doesn't matter what type of storage it is, we're going to include it until we can rule it out. So you can see here, we look at case flow, bin shelving, hand stack, all of this to make sure if you have the right order profile or the right inventory profile, we will make sure we can store it and store it properly and safely. So we look at everything. We always start with an ABC analysis, Pareto's Law. You'll see here it fits scarily almost perfectly, that 80% of our lines is about 28% of their SKUs. So what that tells us is, and even if you look at the quantity, they have a lot of high A movers and then you can see their order profile. We got to slowly decrease it. So they got a big peak in the front and a lot of average, slow-moving stuff behind. So we had to make sure whatever solution that we came up with from a main pick line, whatever solution Kevin came up with for the automation, had to support this data. Okay? So taking that information, taking the size of the location, taking the velocity of those individual SKUs, this is the final solution. You can see we had about 900 slots that we came up with, or 900 slots once we kind of rounded and did some other things. Total of 122 bays. I'll show a little snippet of what that looks like. But this is what we ended up, a lot of case flow to separate that out in the forward pick. And then in the reserve storage, highlight over here about 4,600 pallet locations. The top portion is what they needed for the product. The bottom portion is they needed for their other items, dunnage, bags, stuff they had to store. So that's what we did down there. So we use the optimization software to calculate a lot of this out. So now I'll pause. We know where we're going. We know what racking we need for reserve. We know what the forward pick's going to look like. And now we need to put the product where it needs to go. So we did a slotting activity to make sure that the product was in the right spot. The A movers were where they needed to be. The D movers were the farthest away to decrease the walk time to the A movers, and made sure those products were rightly sized as well. So I just show a little snippet of this. So we have our golden zone and our wedge scenarios. So we reviewed these with the client, with Cabi, and said, how do you want to slot? Right? Let's talk through the pros and cons. You can see this is our step-by-step that we walked them through on how we do it. They chose to go with the golden zone slotting, so making sure all the high movers are right there at a good spot. And that's what we move forward with. So this is the conceptual design. You love it. Block diagram. This is what I gave Kevin. And then you see what Kevin comes up with. I don't know how he interprets this to get what he did. But he takes my block diagram, and you can see the different colors represents the different zones. So one thing we did here is, not zones, velocities. So zone 1, 2, 11, and 12 are all the A movers. We did that purposely. People ask, why don't you do 3 and 4 as the A's? Because I didn't want them to backtrack out. So when they pick, they'll go zone 1, zone 2, and then they'll come down and go out zone 11 and 12. They'll make that quick loop. 80% of the time, they're pretty much done in those two zones, which decreases all that walk time to the left. Every once in a while, they will have to go out and pick that, but it's not very often. The other thing we did from a picking perspective, making sure they could do it, is if they could send an associate to pick zone 1 and 2, they could send a different associate to pick zone 3 and 4. Speed picking up, get outbound packages out. And now, I'm going to pass it to Kevin, but we know where we're going. We know what the ingredients of the building are between the reserve storage, the forward pick. We've slotted the building so we know where all the product's going to go. I've handed off to Kevin my conceptual design and all my data, and now he's going to run with it to build a building.
Well, we're actually going to walk first. Okay. So there's two aspects to what we do with this facility. One is the racking, and there was a short time span to get this in. They had to be out of their facility in Carson the end of February. They wanted to start moving new product that was coming in from overseas directly to their facility in October. So racking was the priority. We had to get this up, had to get them the ability to pick the product and get it out the door. In this layout, there's 7 functions, and every layout we went from this point forward, we always had to maintain, we had those same 7 functionalities within the warehouse. The interesting thing is we were given this in August, and they hadn't picked a building yet. So we're doing the racking design, and what chose or motivated the rack design was what racking material could we get in a short time span. We picked very common 288 tall, 42-inch deep, 4 1/8-inch beams, 3 clicks, 3-pin clips. And we ran all that through preliminary engineering while we were designing it. So the final design looked different from the first design. In the middle of doing the racking layout, we were still analyzing what the automation was going to look like. Some of the slotting analysis that Alpine had done was based on their old picking process where they picked an entire order into each tote and moved it forward. Based on some of the analysis we did and some of the save we thought they could achieve, we changed that to a batch pick. So each tote was one SKU. So the slotting matrix where you would optimally go from one zone to the next and come right back out didn't quite pan out the same way. So they had to relay out the bottom part of it halfway through the approval process. And we had to go back to the city and the state and update permits. All that was getting done. In the end of the day, we did install almost everything by the end of December. I think the first week in January, we finished up some, and then we had the inspectors come out and approve the use of the racking so they could start actually loading the rack based on the slotting technology that Alpine came up with. In the month of January, they were still shipping out of Carson, and they were starting to ship out of the new facility in Indianapolis. And then in February, they quit shipping out of Carson, and everything was going out of Indianapolis. A really tight time frame there. So now the automation. We've got them walking around picking to the totes, or actually the automation isn't in there yet. So currently they're still picking the orders itself to each tote, taking it over to the pack stations and moving forward. We looked at, like they did, the 4 different operations of, 2 DCs, 1 DCs, where they're located. We looked at 4 or 5 different types of automation. One was we moved their existing system over, set it down, put it all together. It's a gravity GOH system, but they had totes that were hanging down, fabric totes, and they would pick into the totes, move those over to the pack stations where Jerry was talking about the multiple operators doing multiple steps. Cabi cares very much about the customer experience when they open the box. It's just not a pile of clothes. They have an individual bag for each order, and all those bags are put into the box for the host order. So there was not a complicated, but slightly modified version of what you'd see in many of the DCs. So we had to accommodate for that, and that's where we started looking at different types of put walls. And we wanted to get them into the batch pick process, and we ended up looking at an automated pit wall, which is an OPEX sure sort. Tompkins also makes them with the space constraints, and because of the product that was available, the OPEX sure sort really did kind of fit. Then we went back to Alpine, and we're like, hey, we got all these options, but they're going to cost difference, they're going to have different labor utilizations, and Alpine had to redo the ROI. So they took all this new information, sat down with Cabi, sat down, had all the discussions, reviewed the drawings, and they came up with their final selection. They did not choose the OPEX perfect pick, but they did pick a rather large manual put wall. There's actually 20 zones on the inbound side. There's 12 on the outbound side. So they're batch picking, bringing down, going from zone to zone, scan the barcode on the tote, lights light up on the put wall from Matthews, confirm the picks, move to the next zone. When the tote's empty, all the picks are completed, they go back out and start the next batch, the next wave. On the opposite side of that wall is where the pack stations were located. When the order was picked complete, our COS software would let the terminals know, hey, these 5 orders are ready to go. Pack station would click that order, bring that into their station. Lights would light up on the correct color sequence of what they needed. They'd go pick those colors. They would do their bag, their tag. They'd add the individual invoice for each individual order, get all that nice and done, and get it into the box, and out it goes. In that whole process, we also have to put the manifest label on there. So that was printed out by us with the COS software, and final manifest in the box went onto the conveyor, went out the conveyor through an automated case taper, out onto a truck, and off it went. This whole system is not installed yet. It's currently on order. It will be installed in the next couple of months, and hopefully in a month or 2 from now, we'll have good feedback on what all the metrics are with this one. But while we were looking at this, one of the things that Cabi has is a very interesting seasonality. They put out new catalogs 4 times a year. So each quarter, they have a huge peak in order, and then it drops off. then a huge peak in order, and then it drops off. That variation is what limited the benefits to the cost of the automated put wall with the OPEX system. But we did design the system, so in the future, they could put this in. Greg is talking now about bringing on new different lines of products into the organization. They're doing that so they can change the peaks from 4 a year to 8 a year to 12 a year. Balance out that order, increase the throughput, and afford one of these. That's why when we did the final design, although we knew we weren't doing that now, we did lay out the facility for future state with the automated put wall. That is the end of my slides, Jerry. I went really fast. I was worried that we were going to be short. I know the weather is bad out there, and if you have any questions, Jerry, you want to finish it up?
Yeah. So just a quick little summary slide. Kind of what we covered. So read Greg's note about the overview. We talked about, solving their problem of being in a location that supports their business from a customer perspective. Talking with Greg this morning, this afternoon really, they've already seen a significant reduction in that transportation costs. He's also admitted they've seen increased in feedback on their orders getting to the show hosts quicker. Being in here in Indianapolis. So it was great to hear that they've already received and starting to see actually bottom line impact to their P&L already without some of the other automation we've done. So big thumbs up from him on those two things there. And the approach, like we mentioned, we did the S&P first to understand the business, come up with kind of a path forward for us to analyze what they were doing and how they were doing it and give suggestions on what they could do better. Then we did, a light distribution network analysis between the 2 DC versus the 1 DC model. We followed that up with an STA and an automation evaluation to make sure that the design of the interior of the building matched exactly what Cabi needed. Once we did those things, we said, okay, now we need to put the product in the right spots to decrease our replenishment and increase our picking speeds. And then lastly, Kevin's team took over and they designed the facility and the layout with a multiple approach to give Cabi the options to choose what they wanted to do now and in the future. So I will end with that and ask if anyone has any questions.